Hi, I'm Ella, and this is an example of a boundary check that you might use for an intimacy call for a theatrical production. This is how I prefer to run boundary checks. Other intimacy choreographers may do things differently, and I freely acknowledge that this method isn't always the right approach for every production. However, this is a boundary check method that can be taught easily, encourages visual as well as verbal communication, and can be abbreviated for time without losing information. So, if you're doing this boundary check with a larger group, like a whole cast, make a circle where you can all see each other. Look around the room, see everyone, find a comfortable, neutral stance, and pick someone to go first. Then you can go around the circle so each member performs a boundary check. Anyone in the circle, but especially those who have intimate moments with the person currently demonstrating their boundaries, should pay attention, ask clarifying questions if need be. The first person in the circle to share will start at the top of their head and work downwards. They will touch the parts of their body that they are okay with someone touching, with smooth, wiping motions of their hands. For parts that they don't want to be touched or should be discussed before touching, they will jump or lift their hands off of their body when they come to that area. The actor may explain under what circumstances you may touch them in that zone, but if they don't, assume that you may not touch them there. They also don't have to explain why that area is off limits. We don't ask anyone to justify their boundaries. When the first person has finished demonstrating their boundaries, the person next to them can begin, and they'll do the same thing. Now, an abbreviated version of boundary checks, which you can do when there isn't enough time or too many people, is to go around the circle and verbally list areas where they don't want to be touched ever, and areas others should ask before touching. Sometimes actors will use the shorthand Big Three to mean that their boundaries are around the front of their chest, front of their pelvis, and back of their pelvis, but of course I always encourage people to be as specific as possible. I also encourage members of the cast who have specific intimate moments with each other to check in with each other privately if they feel it would be helpful. Their partner may want to go into more detail about their boundaries, or they can just check how each other is feeling that day. Part 2. If you're doing this boundary check with one or maybe a few partners, you'll want to face each other, make eye contact, or otherwise ask your partner if they're present. Find a comfortable neutral stance and pick someone to go first. We'll call that person Partner A. Partner A starts at the top of their head and works downward. They will touch the parts of their body that they are okay with someone else touching, with smooth wiping motions of their hands. For parts that they don't want to be touched or should be discussed before touching, they will jump or lift their hands off their body when they come to that area. Partner A may explain under what circumstances you may touch them in that zone, but if they don't, assume you may not touch them there. They don't have to explain why that area is off limits. And when Partner A has finished demonstrating their boundaries, Partner B should tell Partner A what boundaries, if any, they saw A demonstrate. This step ensures that Partner B pays attention and can clarify places where they need more information, and allows Partner A to clarify any parts B missed. This will help prevent misunderstandings on stage. Next, Partner B, the other partner, will do the same type of demonstration as Partner A just did, for their own boundaries. Start at the top of their head, work downwards, touch parts of their body that they are okay with being touched with smooth wiping motions, and jumping or lifting their hands when they come to that area. When Partner B has finished demonstrating their boundaries, Partner A should tell them what boundaries, if any, they saw B demonstrate. B can clarify any parts A missed. General tips. Here are some parts of the body that people commonly forget to go over: their hair, their face, glasses, any other mobility aids or devices they wear, hearing aids, insulin pumps, canes, wheelchairs. For the purposes of intimacy, I consider these a part of you, and only you have the right to allow or not allow others to touch them. Neck, the back, and the back of the body, including back of pelvis and inner thigh. If there's a part of your body that you can't touch, such as your back or your feet, but want to touch for the purposes of this exercise, feel free to communicate this verbally. Don't push the limits of your body or endanger yourself for this exercise. Boundaries can shift between days and between potential partners. We rely on actors understanding their own boundaries and not being pressured to have fewer boundaries than they think they should have or to fit in with the group. Again, I recognize different intimacy choreographers use different language. Areas where you don't want to be touched ever are sometimes called fences, sometimes red or no-fly zones. Areas where others should ask before touching or should modify their touch in some way are sometimes called gates, as in you can open the fence to become a gate that allows others to pass through sometimes. They can also be yellow or ask zones, and all other parts of the body can be called green. So that's just some of the language that you may hear that, or that your actors may feel more comfortable with. As much as possible, use desexualized and degendered language when talking about body parts. You'll notice I said back of pelvis for butt instead of ass, front of pelvis when referring to genitals, chest when sometimes you'd call it breasts, boobs, tits, etc. Though many body parts are given sexual, loaded, or stigmatized connotations by society, we want to encourage participants to view this as a neutral, non-sexualized way to convey important information. And I also said degendered. We don't want to use gendered language, as it often assumes that people who present femininely will have breasts and a vulva, and people who present masculinely do not have breasts but have a penis. One example of gendered language I've heard used by intimacy choreographers is to assume people's boundaries include their bathing suit area, understanding that to mean front and back of pelvis for men, and front and back of pelvis plus chest for women. Again, this asks you to assume what gender another person is, which may be incorrect, or force them to give an invasive explanation, which is why I don't use that language specifically. One thing I'm aware of in my fight and intimacy work is that a lot of it relies on eye contact, but some people with autism dislike making eye contact. So what can be an easy check-in for neurotypical people can become distressing and uncomfortable for someone who's autistic, which defeats the goal of this exercise. That's why I said partners can also check in verbally with each other. Another option is to have a hand gesture shared between partners that indicates everything's okay. Again, I encourage actors to use what feels natural to them. Yeah, so this has been the quick and dirty way to do boundary checks. I hope you found this informative. See you soon.